Locating the sympathetic insect. What does that mean and why does it matter? Well, in the words of E.O. Wilson, the famous sociobiologist, insects are the little things that run the world. They're dying out in alarming numbers, and unfortunately, a lot of us don't like a lot of them. And that got me thinking, why not? I'm a student of literature, and so I started looking at insect imagery in the narratives of film and fiction, because our reactions to what we see there impact on our actions in the real world. And I'm finding that my PhD is taking me on a research journey from horror through to ecology. To kick off with a bit of horror, when Frankenstein looks at his monster, he calls it a vile insect. And what's he loading into that insult? Disgust at its ugliness, a wish to be able to trample it underfoot, and frustration at its cockroach-like ability to survive. Fast forward to the real world in 2015, and David Cameron describes a swarm of people crossing the Mediterranean, and he's heavily criticised for dehumanising people into insects, implying they're almost beneath his notice, and at the same time calling on connotations of biblical plagues, a swarm of locusts set to consume our resources, or flies potentially carrying disease. Nobody thinks he means a swarm of honey-producing bees. It's something creepier, crawlier, the epitome of otherness that we assume is happening there. We don't think Frankenstein's calling his monster a vile butterfly. And it's with the more horrid insect, that's where my PhD has got its focus. A prime text is Richard Marsh's The Beetle. It's a Victorian bestseller, and it was one of the earliest novels to foreground an insect. In it, a European man strangles an Egyptian woman and justifies this by thinking of her as a noxious insect. But do texts like this ingrain attitudes towards insects? Need they be horrific, invasive, alien, people they represent? No, my research is concluding that this rhetoric of repugnance stems from an overly tribal and overly anthropocentric viewpoint. And if we look at insects as our little fellow dwellers on the planet, it becomes possible to have fellow feeling for them. And I'm finding that actually there are an increasing number of texts that are reproducing this point of view. So our fellow dwellers, we find fellow feeling, and they're not so much other as tiny us. Thank you very much.